Hello and welcome to The Horticulturalists. I'm Stephen Ryan.
And I'm Matthew Lucas.
And we post a video every Friday. So why not subscribe and press the alert button so that you can keep up with our daring do.
And do ask Stephen Ryan a question. Leave it in the comments below and we will answer them in 60 seconds in our Monday Shorts.
Yes, please do that. And remember to put where you're from so that I've got context.
Context is all. And Stephen, the context of today is that it's overcast, wintry and cold.
Yes, and we're standing in the middle of the driveway leading into my nursery, Dixonia rare plants.
Why, Stephen Ryan?
Well, we have been filming this driveway off and on now for I think about 8 months or more.
Yeah.
And the idea is to show people how to use very restricted spaces, because both sides of the driveway are only quite narrow beds, how you can use them, how you can get the best out of them, how you can multi-layer them, and how you can have something happening all year round.
Yeah. Every time I come down here, the drive looks completely different. And I literally say to Stephen, this drive looks different. I haven't noticed that. There is so much going on. So just to give context, the orientation is
West to the end of the driveway, east to the bottom end of the driveway. So north against the building, and the north side, because of the building, is actually the shadiest side, and so more shade loving plants tend to be there. The south is a little bit more sunny, although it is getting more and more tree covered as time goes on, but there's a bit more light and I can grow some more sun loving things.
Obviously we're in the southern hemisphere, so the northern side is the light side,
Yeah.
South side is the dark side. And probably width-wise at the top here?
Top end of the driveway, I'd say about 8 meters maybe.
2 cars.
2 cars.
And
Yep.
at the end it narrows.
Yeah, to almost 1 car width.
There you go. So it's not dissimilar to your average sort of slightly old school suburban driveway.
Well, it is very similar, and that's where it will cut over into other people's gardens so that they can use much the same ideas that we have here.
There you go. So I think what this will demonstrate is some ideas that you can use for driveways, but pathways, for small courtyards, anywhere with a constricted space where you want to try and get some seasonal action, some heights.
Exactly. So
Right.
Don't let yourself be limited by space.
No, and we won't be limited by time. We will now step back in time to spring last year and see what was going on in the drive then.
Let's.
Well, it is mid-spring. No, it's
Yes.
late spring.
Yes, it's verging on late spring.
It's very early November, put it that way.
Yes.
And here we are in the epic driveway of Dixonia rare plants. So, Stephen, what is going on at this time of year?
Well, there's lots of things happening, and as we walk down the driveway, we'll find oodles of them. But there's one right there.
And here's brilliant televisual technology.
Right, and here we have a Viburnum that's in flower at the moment, and this is one of those plants that gives me enormous value down this driveway. So in late spring, it's a mass of white lace-cap flowers. By midsummer, it's a mass of brilliant red berries in clusters that hang like grapes. In autumn, its foliage goes brilliant colours before it sheds. So it gives me 3 full seasons, one following the other, which you couldn't ask more of a plant. So this is a European Viburnum. It's one of the Viburnum opulus varieties, and it's opulus Notcutt's variety. So well worth looking out for. Everybody plants the pom-pom snowball tree,
Which I love.
which is a gorgeous plant, but it's sterile, so it doesn't produce berries. So you get the flowers and then you get the autumn foliage.
Yeah.
But with this one, I get flowers, then I get berries, which are very long lasting, and then I get the autumn foliage as well.
And we're talking about a driveway, so we're talking
Yep.
about a narrow garden bed either side. And obviously you don't want to crowd out the drive. And it is a very vertical spreading
Yeah,
shrub.
and a lot of these things are very prunable as well. I mean, I can take the face off some of these plants to keep them back so that a truck can get down the driveway should the need arise, and it often does.
Yes.
So, yes, the beds themselves are only 1.5 meters, 2 meters wide, but it's amazing what I can get in different layers and with pruning techniques and so forth, so that I can get as much value as possible out of the drive.
Well, hopefully we'll see this in all its incarnations over this series of films.
Well, we will indeed, because I promise you're coming back to look at this in summer and autumn and winter, so that we get a sense of just how well I'm covering all the seasons with the plants that I've put into this border.
Okay. Well, let's walk down and see what else is happening now in early November.
Yes.
Another thing about your driveway is this fantastic Acer, which is right at the, literally on the pavement. It's like
Yes,
an
it's
entry
right
point.
at the very front. Again, I've had to lift the canopy up, so I've been taking the lower branches off so that trucks could get under it. And I think it's probably one of the very best of the burgundy leafed maples.
Yes.
And there's a lot of different selections that have been made over the years, both in the West and also in Japan. This particular one is one called Acer Palmatum Bloodgood. So Bloodgood is the cultivar name. It keeps a good rich red foliage right from spring till autumn when it goes bright scarlet. So again, for right through the seasons. And in midsummer, it has a mass of red winged seeds that hang underneath the branches, which gives it another aspect.
But it's a small tree
Yes.
with a small canopy, so ideal for this kind of spot.
Oh yes, perfect. And because it is a small tree, it could be planted against a building or on the edge of a driveway like it is here.
Yeah.
It's not going to get in the way. It's not going to have root systems that are likely to cause any grief or problems. So I think it's a perfect small tree in the right climate.
There you go. All right, let's go and see what else is down here.
Good. Right, well, of course, everybody by now knows, if they're regular subscribers to our YouTube channel, that I have a passion for dogwoods. And we've got several along the driveway here. And again, they pay their way. They have attractive form, they have great spring flowers, which are long lasting, and they also get fantastic autumn colour. And this is one of the Rutgers University hybrids, and it's one called Constellation, which is making quite a nice small to medium tree. And this year it's flowering reasonably well for the first time, and it's grown surprisingly quickly. And right next to me, just coming out into flower, is the weeping version of Cornus kousa, called Weaver's Weeping. And it's a charming little miniature dogwood that will just make a lovely weeping mound. Again, good flowers, good form, and great autumn foliage, so it pays its way. And thirdly, we have the dwarf ginkgo. Now, ginkgos are normally great big trees, but this is a dwarf version found, I think, in Germany called Mariken. And it's been grafted onto a metre tall standard, and it will just make a little ball of foliage. And again, its leaf shape and form make it pay its way from spring till autumn. And then of course in the autumn, this little ball of a thing will turn bright golden yellow before it sheds, and will give you great contrast with the dogwoods, which will go sort of orange to red. And of course the other thing to keep in mind is the dogwood stays comparatively upright and can be pruned to stay that way. The weeping one can be kept quite narrow, so again it would work quite well in a narrow space. And because of the dwarf stature of the ginkgo, it's always going to fit into a nice little corner somewhere without taking up too much space.
Now, Stephen, this doesn't look like an obvious choice for a narrow space on a drive.
No, it's a larch, and I bought it many, many years ago. It was a young grafted tree. It was probably only about a metre tall. And I bought it from a nursery in the Dandenong Ranges as Larix decidua Hillier's weeper. And I can't find any reference to a weeping form of larch called Hillier's weeper. So I don't know really what I've got in one sense. I trained it up on a stake for many years. It was a big piece of metal water pipe that I had to tie it up to the top of. And then I removed the lower branches as it went up so that I got height and above the driveway. And now it's become this amazing sort of, I don't know, arch over the driveway.
It is so beautiful.
And of course, being a larch, it has very attractive cones that start off a sort of a pinky red.
I can see them. Yeah.
And then they go brown with age.
Yeah.
And of course, it's a deciduous conifer, so it changes dramatically through the year. So in the autumn, the whole tree, all the needles go soft yellow and shed. And then in the winter, you've got this rather eerie, almost spooky sort of form and shape to it. And so I get probably as many comments on that tree as almost anything that I have down the driveway.
There you
So
go.
including people who say, I think your conifer's dying. Now, this is a plant that might not necessarily be a first choice along a driveway, but I have to say this is doing its job exceedingly well. It's a bamboo called Fargesia rufa.
Yep.
It's one of the Himalayan clumping bamboos.
Yeah.
There's actually 2 clumps of it planted in this bed, so it's sort of a little bit more elongated. And the reason I selected this for along the driveway was, one, I like the texture, of course, but it hides all the infrastructure in the shop building behind me. So there's an air conditioning unit behind there.
Oh, yeah.
There's the water meters are behind there. The electricity meters behind there. So by having something evergreen and soft and fluffy in the front, I've been able to hide all that infrastructure. So it becomes an integral part of the what I've designed as the driveway, because it's doing a job that people don't know about, and that is hiding.
And of course, it's evergreen, and as it's clumping, it's not going to go crazy.
No, it just slowly over the years grows sideways. If I need any propagating material from it, I generally dig it off the back of the clump to keep it away from the air conditioning unit a little bit, and it just fluffs up there, moves in the wind. Probably doesn't engage with everybody that walks down the driveway, but it's doing a sterling job for what I wanted.
Which they don't know, which is the whole point.
Yeah, exactly. They don't know what's behind there, which is ugly stuff.
There you go,
Yes.
superstar bamboo. Well, that's late spring on your driveway. I guess we'll see you next time.
Perhaps in summertime we'll have a look and see what's going on then.
Yes, maybe early summer and then maybe late summer, who knows, but we'll see you then.
We could do it weekly,
Well, it's early summer, Stephen.
if you could believe that.
Oh my goodness, literally you can see our breath, it is so cold.
Yeah, and it's been raining overnight. It's been drizzling this morning. This is not the best day to be filming, but it is early summer and we wanted to have another look at the driveway.
Yeah, so this is part of our driveway epic, and interestingly, it looks very layered and green at the moment. There aren't huge splashes of colour.
No, there's not huge splashes of colour, but there is in fact interesting things still doing their things along the driveway. So at times of the year, I mean, there's always got to be something. This is a commercial nursery entryway. So there's always got to be something doing their thing. But sometimes it will be more a matter of discovery. As you go down the driveway, you'll see the odd thing will suddenly leap out at you from the side. And so there's always a plant that people hopefully will come into the nursery and say, what's that yellow thing down the driveway, or
where
whatever.
can I buy it?
Yeah, just here, funnily enough.
Well, why don't we do just that? Walk down the drive and go and see what's going on right now.
Good.
So Stephen, to your point about discovery,
Yes.
you've really got to look for this. What's going on in here?
Well, hidden in behind this beautiful lacy-leafed Russ is a Hypericum, one of the hybrid ones from Ireland, in fact. It's called Hypericum Rowallane, named after the famous garden in Ireland of Rowallane. And it has bright yellow flowers, and yes, it's something you have to discover as you go down the driveway, because I cannot allow any vague space to be left, because every space has to have some sort of plant in it doing its thing. So some will be more obvious, others will be hidden a little bit, but isn't that part of the fun of being in a garden, is to find the undiscovered and things as you go along? So the Hypericum is here, and hopefully people who are coming into the nursery will go, oh, what is that lovely yellow thing, as I said before?
So briefly then, Hypericum is a huge family, but this particular one, this is obviously in quite dense shade.
It is in quite a shady spot, although it's perfectly happy out in full sun. So it's one of those plants that I can use in lots of different ways.
Yeah. Now, we've said this before, but when, I'm stuck under this before, when did you actually first plant this drive?
All right, well, it started in the, well, actually it very first started around about 1980 when I started the nursery. But then, of course, we had the Ash Wednesday bushfires in 83. So really the planting that's here now was planted after the fires. So 84, 85 when the initial plantings were done.
But never want to rest on your laurels. You are continually adding, and so
yeah, or subtracting.
True.
Yeah. So there's a gap there because something wasn't functioning well, and so I decided to add another plant to my national Cornus collection, the dogwoods, and this is actually a North American variegated form of Cornus Florida called Florida Welchii, and I had it years ago, managed to kill it. I've recently
well done.
Yeah, well, you do these things. Recently managed to source some young stock again, so I've now got Welchii back in my collection, and it will have its variegated foliage from spring till autumn. It will colour in the autumn. I'll get flowers off it, and it's a semi-dwarf one. It'll only ever grow up to around about 1.5 meters, 2 meters. So it should fit in this gap with a little bit of pruning from the maple around it perfectly well, and it'll be something that'll catch people's attention as they walk in.
And I guess too, the other thing about so if we look at that side, which I'll show people, it looks very layered and very mature and very established. So, but there are occurrences when something fails or reaches the end of its life or didn't work, that you do have the chance to actually make quite a bold new statement.
Oh yes, exactly. And in fact, I'm much happier with the plant that's there now for lots of reasons, apart from adding to a national collection. But it's going to be an eye-catching plant, which a lot of these things need to be in my entryway, and it will do things throughout a fairly prolonged period of the year. So it's going to pay its way. All right, well, this one is another variegated dogwood, yet again to add to my national collection. And this is a golden variegated form of Cornus kousa, which of course is one of the Asian dogwoods. So people will be able to compare the different dogwoods on either side of the driveway. This one went in 2 winters ago. The Welchii, I only planted this last winter, so it's only brand new into the ground, so it hasn't even been through a season yet. So this one's just starting to hit its straps, and in time to come, it will fill this gap here just nicely. Everybody's probably aware by now that I'm a bit of an aficionado of variegated foliages, and these will work really well together because the gold variegation of that will pick up the bronzish colour of the weeping maple underneath. We've got the rich green behind us of one of the other dogwoods, which has been in the ground for probably 20 years now. And so it's a matter of trying to get the juxtaposition right with the different textures, shapes, colours and forms of all the plants down along the driveway. And of course, the people who have the shop next door to me have quite conveniently painted the building in a nice charcoal colour. It used to be white, which was much harder to work against. Now I've got a charcoal background. All these variegations actually leap out at you, so they work exceedingly well. All right, this little plant is slowly working its way forward from the back of the border. Initially, I planted with the idea of it growing up the fence and being sort of a little espalier. But of course, the other shrubs in front have grown up in front of it, so the fence has almost disappeared. So I'm happy for this to sort of trail its way through. And it is one of those sort of almost scandent archy shrubs. So it, in fact, will work quite well that way. And I grew this years ago from a cutting, and it was at the time called Abelia floribunda. It's now Vesalea floribunda, and it comes from Mexico, and it flowers for months. But it doesn't make a tidy, neat bush in a pot, so it's very hard to sell. But if I've got one that's growing and flowering and looking good in the garden, my scruffy pot-grown plants may well sell.
Now this caught my eye, Stephen. What is this handsome little thing?
Well, it's, I have to say, slightly subtle, so I'm quite pleased that it caught your eye, but a useful and attractive little shrub nonetheless. Commonly, well, one of the common names is Chilean guava.
Is it A from Chile and B a guava?
Well, it's certainly from Chile, but it's not a true guava. It's in the Myrtaceae family. It's botanically known as Ugni molinae, and one of its common names in Chile is Ugni berry. So it would seem to me likely that that was the name that was then adapted as a botanical name when they realised it was no longer a myrtle. So they've put it in its own genus. I think there's 2 or 3 species, but they're all fairly similar. It has tiny little pink bells on it.
Have quite a beautiful fragrance.
Yeah, it's a charming little plant. The other thing I love about it is that old leaves go red as they're dying and are often sort of midsummer or early to midsummer in when they drop because the new leaves are coming up. When the flowers finish, it produces little dark, almost a burgundy red berry, and the berries smell like ripe strawberries. So you could be walking down the driveway here and you'll get hit by the scent of wild strawberries.
That sounds amazing.
And they taste like strawberries as well. So it's got a lovely flavour. So it's a nice little pick and browse one. I mean, if you were going to actually use it to make jams or jellies or something, you'd be there for hours picking it.
You'd need a hedge, because I have heard people promote this as an alternative to box.
Yeah, look,
Or to hedging. What do you think?
look, it could make a good low hedge. It doesn't have the strength of stems that the box has, so it's unlikely to be as nice, neat a hedge as a box could be. But nonetheless, it could make a nice low hedge, or even just a low, untrimmed screen, you know, so it would probably be almost better that way.
So it's evergreen, it's prunable.
Yeah, very prunable. And coming from Chile, it's one of those plants that is reasonably sun tolerant, but it doesn't like to get really hot and dry. It won't go down to really, really low temperatures, but we can't throw anything at it that it would make it worry in this country. And I know at one point there was a push in Tasmania to grow it as a crop plant, and they were starting to PR the Ugni berry and all sorts of things. Doesn't seem to have got legs though. All right, well, this is yet another one of my dogwoods or cornuses. And this one I bought originally as Cornus angustatus. It would seem that Kew Botanic Gardens believe it's a subspecies of capitata. Whatever it is, it has really nice glossy green foliage, a lovely tiered layered habit, and it's the very last of the flowering dogwoods to flower for me in my garden. So it will carry me right through into January and give me colour and interest right through that period of the year. This particular one is from southern China in similar habitats to what the more commonly grown capitata comes from.
Stephen Ryan, Nandina, I am shocked, because we are called the horticulturalists for a reason.
Yes.
You think these are common?
They are common, but not this one.
Okay, what's
Yeah.
this one?
All right. Well, this one is a selected version of Nandina domestica. It was discovered in New Zealand and it's grown for its very heavy fruiting. So most Nandinas will fruit, but this particular selection, which is called Richmond, has particularly heavy crops of fruit on it, which may or may not be to some people's likings. I think they're fabulous.
I like it a lot.
It flowers at the same time as the fruit from last year is ripening. The fruit goes on for months and months and months. So it's great for picking. Of course, we're heading towards Christmas. It would be ideal for me to use in Christmas decorations for midsummer, Christmas in the Southern Hemisphere. The foliage is handsome and its verticality makes it very useful in a narrow bed because, as people may not have noticed, the beds get narrower and narrower as we get to the bottom because the shop is on a slight angle, and so therefore this is the very tiniest bit of garden bed. So I've only got about 18 inches of garden bed to put something in, and the Nandina works perfectly.
Now, an observation that the flower heads unopened look beautiful. The actual open flowers are inconsequential and almost not noticeable.
Well, sort of,
But
but
the yellow ones, is that the open flower?
no, that's just the stamens left after the petals have dropped off.
Oh.
So when it does open, the flowers are tiny little white flowers.
Oh, okay.
But the rain has probably taken most of the old petals off these ones
right.
because it was raining last night. But I love the combination of having bright red berries and the white flowers and the ferny foliage on a vertical shrub that is almost indestructible.
It's a winner.
Yeah.
So we've made our way to the end, Stephen.
Yes, we're at the end of the driveway, and one of the anchor plants for my driveway would have to be Cornus Flame, because in early to midsummer, in fact virtually right through to the end of summer, it has these fabulous plumes on them, which start this sort of coppery colour, but as the plumes age they go grey, so they look very smoky. So towards the end of the summer period you've got that amazing smoke. And then, of course, come autumn, the whole thing turns brilliant scarlet and red, and all the foliage drops off. So from beginning of summer right through to end of autumn, this is a really feature plant in the garden, and it's now about 4 or 5 metres tall, so it's becoming a small tree.
Well, we will now leave your drive here in early summer where it's absolutely freezing and see what happens next season.
All right, good idea.
Well, Stephen, it is midsummer and we're on your drive again.
Yes, exactly. And we've got a whole range of other plants that are doing their thing or one of their things at this time of the year. So, of course, again, it's all about trying to encourage people to look at different plants every time of the year. So the driveway has to pay its way.
It does, and yours really does. Every time I come, there is something going on. But this baby, which has cropped up in a lot of our videos in different locations.
Yes, exactly. And this is, of course, the cutleaf version of the North American staghorn sumac, Rus typhona laciniata. So it's in full bloom at the moment. And so you've got these wonderful burgundy cones and the very fine, soft, feathery type foliage. It will eventually grow to a small tree, probably about 4 metres or so. And I guess the only downside with it is that it has a tendency to sucker. So there are babies coming up around it at the moment. And so one either has to love them and engage with them and encourage them and end up with a thicket, or one has to control the suckers on a regular basis.
Or dig them up and sell them.
Which is what I do.
Because the evil wheels of commerce must keep turning.
Yes, exactly.
The leaves are glorious for this.
Yeah.
Now, is this the same Rus that you can coppice and you use it as a foliage plant in perennial borders?
Yes and no. Because the one I've used in the garden at home is in fact Rus glabra in its cut leaf form. So it has a green flower spike, but you can do exactly the same with this one, but its autumnal colour tends to be more in the rich oranges, whereas glabra's forms tend to be more in the scarlety reds. So you can do the same with both, but they are slightly different forms. Of course, if you cut this one down to ground level every winter, you're not so inclined to get the red cones.
Which
so
are
there is a downside.
sensational.
Well, and they're there right into the winter. So this not only gives me summer interest, then into autumn, but the beautiful burgundy flower spikes stay on the plant right through the winter months.
Right.
And in fact, there's old ones from last year still in there if you go hunting that are still not looking all that bad, but they're hidden in amongst the other foliage. So it does all those things. And I guess just in passing, we must mention it is not toxic. It's not going to give anybody a rash.
Yeah.
It is not the plant that people are frightened of in Australia when you mention the word Russ. And in fact, it isn't anymore. It's been taken out of the genus and it's in another genus. So there you
Okay,
go.
the leaves are fabulous. Well, let us move on because something right next to it is equally as wonderful.
I think so.
So Stephen, this though looks like it's autumn.
Yeah, it does rather, doesn't it? Yes, this is a Viburnum, and we've featured this plant before because, again, it's one of those plants that gives me great value for the space it takes up.
Yeah.
Because it does lots of different things. So in the spring, you get the white lace cap flowers,
Which we've seen.
Now in high summer, the berries are nicely ripening, and they'll go a little bit redder than this by the time they're fully ripe.
Yeah.
And also in the summer, it also starts to show a little bit of autumnalness as the foliage matures.
Ah, so I was wondering, is this new foliage? But no.
No, it's not. It's going into its slightly autumnal colour. The berries, at least here, tend to be left alone by the birds, so they'll hang on the plant till they virtually turn into little wrinkly currants later in the season.
Yeah.
And in the autumn, the whole plant will go shades of yellow, oranges and scarlets before it sheds, and the berries are often still on it into the winter when it's bare. So it's a plant that gives me value from spring right through until the end of autumn, early winter. So again, another plant along the driveway that really pays its way.
And I guess too, just the form, it's sort of upright and arching, so
Yeah.
it's great for.
Yes, I can
The
prune
side
it up and keep it
of
back
a
off the
drive.
driveway. So it works really well from that perspective. So I think it's a fabulous plant.
All right. Now there's something else
Oh,
just
oh,
next to
just
it,
next door, so we need to move across
which
again.
I've not seen before.
All right, let's go.
Now I've been down your drive so often, and this is the thing, there's always something new. I've just never noticed this before.
Yeah, and look, it's not a plant that really pops for most of the year.
No.
It's evergreen, so it does at least fill a space year round. And it's a shrub from China. It's a small genus called Itea or Itea, I-T-E-A, which apparently is from the Greek for willow, because apparently some of the varieties have willow-like foliage,
Yes.
which isn't this one.
No, it's a
This
little
one
prickly.
yeah, well, this one is actually called Itea alicifolia, which means holly-leafed. So that makes logical sense. So
Yes.
It's an evergreen arching shrub from China, and I think it's an elegant plant even when it's not in flower. But it flowers in high summer, flowers for quite a while, and it has these amazing drooping green catkins, and it does have a slightly honey-like fragrance. I don't
It
know whether you
does.
pick it up or not.
Yeah,
But it sort of does the same job as Garrya elliptica, except in midsummer.
Different season.
Yeah, so, and I remember seeing a superb specimen of this growing at Great Dixter Garden in England, right next to the Edwin Lutyens circular steps, and falling in love with it and deciding I had to have one here.
And here it is. And actually, like Garrya elliptica, very similar leaf.
Yeah, not dissimilar in its sort of leathery.
Yeah, prickly.
Although the Garrya is a little bit grayer in foliage.
Now, does it get berries from these catkins?
No, it just gets little dry seed pods, little
Yeah.
round dry seed pods. And I have to say, when the flowers finish, they're not unattractive even then, because they're sort of like bronzy bangles that sort of hang down.
Oh.
So,
Bronzy bangles.
yeah.
Now, you said it's from China. Obviously, we're in Mount Macedon, which gets quite cool winters. So what's its sort of hardiness range?
Well, it obviously grows in Sussex in England quite well because that's where I saw one.
Yes.
And so it will go down to quite low temperatures. It's not great with high heat and humidity though.
Right.
So a slightly Mediterranean climate should suit it fine. It'll go down to a few degrees of frost. It doesn't like really high temperatures, but I'm growing mine actually in under a big Japanese maple. So it's got light shade pretty well all the time.
And is it a shady shrub? Or?
I would say in Australia, yes.
Yeah.
I think in cooler climates than ours, it would probably be a good shrub for an open sunny aspect.
Yeah.
And in fact, in really cold climates, you might even use it as a wall shrub on a south wall in the northern hemisphere where it catches the sun but keeps a little bit warm and keeps the frost off.
Brilliant. Amazing flowers.
Yeah, I just love it. I think it's a very elegant high summer plant.
And talking of which, more amazing flowers
Yeah,
just down here.
Yes.
It's the drive that keeps on giving.
Yes, exactly.
And so another pendulous white flower
And scented.
and scented.
It's got a really musky perfume.
Yeah.
Clethra. We have talked about Clethra before in some of our videos.
Sounds familiar.
Different ones.
Yes.
It's a weird little genus. There's not that many species of it, but there are a number from China and through other parts of Asia. There are some nice North American Clethras as well.
Yeah.
And then there's one sort of, well, there's a couple of outriders really. There's at least one that comes from Mexico, and there is also an evergreen one that comes from Madeira. And so
it gets around.
It does get around. Now, this one is one of the Chinese species, Clethra fargesii. And by the way, Clethra comes from the Greek for elder, as in the elder tree. And I'm not quite sure of the connection. I think some of the Clethras might have elder-like foliage. So otherwise, there's no real connection I can think of. But this is another plant that pays its way down my driveway. It flowers in high summer, which is really useful. It colours superbly in the autumn.
Right.
So it goes oranges, yellows, and even vaguely into reds in the autumn. So when it's shedding, it looks fantastic. And as a bare-stemmed plant in the winter, it has really lovely bark and trunks. So it actually has, I think, as good a bark as some of your crepe myrtles and that sort of thing. So on the main trunks, you get this beautiful patchy bark.
Right.
So it's interesting in the winter as well. So again, it pays.
So it's not quite fully open yet, but still the bees and the butterflies are loving it. And there is a beautiful fragrance.
Oh, and look, give it another week or two when the flowers come fully out. This will be one of those plants people will walk down the driveway and they'll sort of not quite figure where it's coming from, and they'll come in and go, where is that perfume? And so the Clethra, once smelt, you never forget that scent because it's a completely different sort of perfume.
Once smelt, never forgotten. Well, on to the next.
Yes, let's go.
All right. And what do we have here, Stephen?
All right. Now, this has become something of a quandary in a way.
Ooh.
It's Calicarpa japonica. So Calicarpa means beauty berry.
Oh, those
bunches of purple berries.
beautiful berries. Yes,
and
yes,
the
yes.
common one out there that you see around is a form of Calicarpa geraldii, but it's, again, quite a reasonable sized genus. There are North American ones, there are Asian ones, so it's another one of those genera that jumps across the two continents.
Yes.
And it gets these little violety, pinky, purpley flowers on it in high summer.
Very
which
pretty.
Is fabulous.
Yeah.
But my plant rarely, if ever, sets any berries. Now,
and that's the whole point.
well, it's part of the point from my perspective. It would have, to pay really well, it was going to flower for me in the summer, get its little purple berries in the autumn, and I have a sense that maybe it needs a cross-pollinator or something. I don't know enough about Calicarpa japonica to know whether it does need a pollinator, but anyhow, my plant rarely berries, but again, we'll visit this plant in the autumn because it goes the most amazing shades of yellow and purple.
Right.
In the autumn. So its autumnal colour is gorgeous. But it's in bloom at the moment, so it is doing something down the driveway.
Yeah.
And I think it has a more elegant habit than the common ones out there. They're very sort of upright, ungainly, twiggy sort of things. The berries are fabulous, but they're not as pretty a bush. This at least has a nice shaped form to it.
It is. The flowers are sort of lovely little splotches of mauve, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. And look, it's passing its best now. It's still got a few flowers on it, and it's actually not flowering as heavily this year as it regularly does. It must have known we were going to film. But it is a really pretty shrub, and for some reason or another, and I don't quite understand why, it's very popular apparently with bonsai enthusiasts.
Oh.
And it doesn't strike me as a sort of a bonsai plant, but I've sold oodles of them to people who are bonsai enthusiasts. So go figure.
There you go. But I think there's just one last thing for us to look at right in front of us.
All right, other side of the driveway, let's go.
And what's this dainty little dangly thing?
Yes, well, we have featured this on one of our other videos, so we may be able to find it and link to that video if anybody wants to go in. But this is a plant called Kradenan Pigua from South America.
Yeah.
It likes a cool, shady root run, grows into a small tree, 4, maybe 5 meters tall, and it flowers for months in the summer. So you get these little white, almost Tiffany lampshade type flowers on it.
Very delicate.
And its dark green evergreen foliage is pleasing, if not exciting. And the flowers are gorgeous. And it's probably the lesser known relative of the bright red one that comes from South America, Kradenan hookerianum.
Yes.
And so this is a less seen one, but nonetheless a very pretty plant. And there's a couple of other species out there I haven't met, so if anybody's got the others, I'd like them, thank you, because they're all summer flowering shrubs or small trees, and they all like a cool root run. So like many of those South American plants, they grow really well in cool but not cold and not hot sort of climates. So that sort of intermediate of everything. And I've seen these growing in Europe in gardens in the south of England and so forth. So they certainly can be grown in other areas, but probably not in the really cold parts. And they probably don't like a hot, sort of steamy climate either. But Crinodendron will flower for months, so it does give me something interesting down my driveway over a long time during the summer.
And once again, just practically, it has an arching habit. So the flowers hang down. So as you're walking or driving down the drive, it's like a little sort of umbrella of white beauty. It's gorgeous.
Again, it's also one of those plants I can prune appropriately to keep it within bounds in the driveway.
Yeah.
If it was in the middle of a garden bed somewhere, I might allow it to be a lot spreadier. But yes, I've kept it up in the air a little bit, and it does make for an interesting feature plant.
Well, there you go. Well, I think we're done midsummer. Let's see what late summer or early autumn has to offer.
Well, I'm sure there'll be something interesting to look at then.
Okay, see you then. It's autumn in the driveway, Stephen.
Yes, exactly. And we've been looking at this driveway right through the seasons. So we figured we better have a quick look and see what's of interest at this time of the year. And things that are colouring, of course, with autumn colour are the things that we're going to look at. So I've got dogwoods in autumn colour at the moment. There's clethra starting to colour. There's some Japanese maples. So there's oodles of autumnal colour all the way down the driveway. The smoke bush is nearly finished, the cotinus. So it's been a spectacular event.
It is, and I just want to swing around. The rus has got its wonderful seed heads.
Yes, which I think are fabulous.
And no leaves.
And no leaves. There you go. I will let you come in so you can have a look as well. So there we go. So this will look good and interesting all through the winter months.
There you go. Well, autumn, actually it's late autumn. Let's swing the camera around so everyone can see. Late autumn in Stephen's Drive, and there is so much colour and it's beautiful.
Yes, it's looking lovely, and the winter's coming.
Let's wait till winter. Well, that was all fantastic, but before we end, we should just have a quick look at what's going on in the driveway now in winter.
Yes, because that's always a difficult time to get interest and variation in a garden.
This midwinter, Stephen, flowers.
Yes, exactly. Fargesia japonica in its variegated form, flowering its little head off and giving the pollinators something to play with.
And of course, my love for variegation knows no end, but it does in winter just serve its purpose, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. Yes, it lightens up this dark corner, and I think it's a fabulous plant.
And this is against the side of the building, which is obviously painted a dark grey, so the variegation looks great. And there's another variegated leaf over there. It looks great against a darker background.
Oh, yes, it works very well indeed.
Okay, let's see what else is happening down there.
Now, this is a shrub that grows beautifully in dark shade, and this is quite a dark shady spot under an evergreen dogwood. And it's a skimmia, which are Asian shrubs, evergreen. At the moment, it is in bud. And so it's got these lovely dark burgundy coloured flower buds. It'll open up to small white flowers in about 3 or 4 weeks. So by midwinter, the flowers are perfumed. And this is a selected form of Skimmia japonica called rubella. And I think it's a charming shrub, eventually about 1.5 meters tall, but very prunable as well.
Well, Stephen, quite a beautiful wintry colour moment here.
I think so. So we've got a bamboo.
Yeah.
One of my favourite groups of plants, quite obviously.
Yes.
So Welchii from Japan. Now, it's an absolute thug, but where can it go? It's got a driveway, it's got a building, it's got other plants around it. It's controlled.
Where are you going to go?
Yeah, exactly. And so that makes wonderful effect. Now, it's not variegation, though, I must point out. It's actually dead parchment edges around the edge of the leaves.
Yeah.
So when the new growth comes out, it doesn't have that variegated look. It's straight green. And so every year or two, I cut it down really hard, start it off fresh again.
It's very graphic, though, because of the strength of that.
Oh yes, beautiful
Border.
plant.
Yeah.
And above it is the Tibetan cherry, Prunus cerula, with its lovely mahogany coloured bark, which I think is a nice contrast. And behind it, just back here, we have Neelia incisor, which is still in its autumn colour in virtually midwinter.
Yeah.
And in the next few weeks, the Edgeworthia papifera, or Edgeworthia chrysantha as it's now known, will be in flower as well. So a nice little sort of combination here at the moment.
This is a beautiful moment as you come into the nursery.
And in the winter.
Now, we have looked at this, I think, in just about every season.
Yes, exactly. And that's one of the reasons it's here.
Yeah. Because
it does pay its way all year round. This is the cut leaf version of the sumac, Rus typhona laciniata. And so it has ferny-like foliage in the summer, fabulous autumn foliage, and then these beautiful horn-like cones of flowers that hang on well into the winter, and so still make some impact over a very, very long period.
It's actually got really beautiful velvety new growth too. It's like deer antlers when they're fresh. Oh,
Yeah,
it's
it's
gorgeous.
a gorgeous thing. And I regularly get people comment on it, even at this time of the year, because it's such an odd looking thing that sort of stands out to people. And it would be lovely for picking and using in the vase as well. So not that I'm going to. And I guess the only other thing we need to mention about this plant is it has a zest for life, and it's another one of those suckering thugs.
Which you dig up and sell to other
Suckers.
Well, I hope everyone found that interesting, Stephen, because we've shot so many bits of films along here too, because there are so many interesting plants and shrubs throughout this driveway. And for such, I mean, it's a tight, tricky spot, but you've got so much going on.
Yeah, so it just goes to prove that no matter how small your garden space, you can do more than whack one plant in it.
Yeah, think about layers, think about texture, and think about verticality.
Yeah, and also pruning and managing. You know, and that's something I've had to do along this driveway as well, because we've often got to get 10-metre truckloads of potting mix down the driveway.
And that point too, particularly about the bamboo, that if anything is going to be thuggish or running, it's going to be naturally contained by the physicality of the space.
Yes, it will not escape from there.
There you go. A brilliant set of ideas for anyone who's got a similarly narrow constricted space, or even a courtyard or a driveway or next to a path.
Yeah, exactly. So don't be constricted by space, make the most of it.
Absolutely. Well, I hope you've loved this. We've loved making it over the last
many
months, sort of 8 months, I think. We've started in spring and now it's winter. Anyway, if you want to know what we're doing next week, you'll have to hit subscribe.
And don't forget our Monday shorts. So if you've got a burning horticultural question you'd like to ask me, put it in the comments below. Tell me where you're from, and Matthew will read it and I will answer it on our Monday shorts.
Because he's the expert. But we look forward to seeing you next week.
Bye all.